Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Are you ready? Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July. And you did some good things out there and enjoyed the fireworks and whatever. And didn't set your house on fire doing it. Oh, it can always depend on some idiot out there playing around with fireworks, and before you know it, people get burned. So anyway, yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed their holiday, and I went out and got some lobster and I ate that, and I took a drive down towards the coast, and then I came back, and I don't know, I just wasn't feeling the energy to go out there and stand outside and watch the fireworks, so I didn't go. But I enjoyed yesterday just as well anyway, without the fireworks. I could hear it though through the window, the explosions. You know, sound travels up the river pretty good, so you know, it sounded like it was right here, you know. But but yeah, that's how I spent the day. It was a nice day yesterday too. We didn't get the rain they said we were supposed to get yesterday. Instead it was just cloudy, but there was enough cloud breaks for sun to come through, and so it turned out to be pretty good day. And driving around, I see a lot of things have been changed, and down towards the coast some buildings are gone that were there before, and you know, some restaurants that used to be there are gone. And anglers, I don't know how many of you know that, if anyone from Maine, Anglers out on the outside of Hamden, that's closed up now. I used to like going there on the 4th because I go there to have lobster, so I'd find some other place to eat that. So yeah, I mean, things, you know, you change. I mean, I don't always go down that way except during the summer. In the wintertime it's a bitch to get down in there because the roads are not really accommodating for travel. And in the summertime, I mean, the traffic down that way is going to be a lot too, because everybody is going down that way to towards the sea. You know, the boats are down there, and you know, all kinds of things are going on down that way. So, but in the wintertime, I don't know, the roads are just really kind of dangerous, and I don't really travel down that way anyway. So anyway, that was the time to go down there. So I want you to take a look at this 15-minute video here that I copied, and I'm putting on this video for you to watch. Basically, it's you know, starts off with Donald Trump being recorded running his big fat mouth like always. You know, he ought to know by now that, hey, anything you say and do is going to be recorded somewhere. You can't say nasty shit and it never gets out. Okay. He should have learned that lesson by now, but no, we caught him again. And then there's this nice little clip there that's in that video from Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that after you see the video. So let's go to the video here and watch that.
I understand that the corporate media and all of MAGA wanted us all to panic. They wanted to try to push President Biden out, but it looks like their efforts are now backfiring in their face, and people are rallying behind President Biden because despite the media spending all of their time obsessed with Donald Trump and attacking President Biden and not talking about the data, not talking about the economic record that President Biden has, not talking about what President Biden has delivered once in, I think, any generation, historic pieces of legislation like the CHIPS Act and the PACT Act and the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act, and I can go on and on and on. People's lives have been benefited by President Biden, despite how much the media and Trump wants to gaslight us. First thing I want to show you, though, is the video that was taken of Donald Trump recently while he was doing what he always does, which is playing golf. I just want you to listen to the nastiness in his voice and just what a horrible and despicable person he is as he brags that he got President Biden out, which he did not. And then he says that President Biden is an old, broken down pile of crap. And then he calls Vice President Harris pathetic. Let me just share with you this clip. Play it.
How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, amazing.
Kick that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
It's a bad guy. He just quit, you know. He's quitting the race. Is that right? Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
It's so amazing.
It's just so fucking bad. So,
I just can't imagine.
but can you imagine that guy with dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man, a very tough guy. And they see him. They probably he can't. But they just announced he's probably quitting.
Good. Very good. Yeah, that's amazing.
And just to think about the lack of character in that individual. And of course, you've seen now all the videos we've been doing here at the Midas Touch Network, talking about Donald Trump's Epstein connections and talking about how Donald Trump's a convicted felon, how Donald Trump is someone who's been found liable for sexual assault. We've gone through it all here at the Midas Touch Network, and I just think the American people get it. The media wants to focus on ageism. The American people want to focus on their families and their life and the economy, things that President Biden has helped out that the media refuses to cover. I mean, just take a look recently, post-debate. Here is the Decision Desk poll of polls right here of the average in Wisconsin. President Biden's now taken a lead in Wisconsin post-debate, and I think we're going to see this trend over and over and again. Here's what I want to show you, too, because, you know, as the New York Times has refused to focus on Trump's Epstein connection, refused to call for Donald Trump's ouster, despite the convictions, despite being found liable for sexual assault, despite being found liable for fraud, despite mishandling COVID, resulting in millions of deaths. The New York Times doesn't want to really focus on that, barely even focusing on the fact that the Trump justices on the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, took away women's reproductive rights, declared that presidents are kings. You don't hear any outrage from the New York Times or the punditry class about that. But let me just show you how out of touch the New York Times is with the public. The New York Times posted the following on its Instagram account. Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. And they go on to say, the New York Times has been on the forefront of this coverage. We are speaking with multiple people under conditions of anonymity. There were tens of thousands of responses. When I first captured this, I think there was 9,000 comments, and then that's all increased since then. But take a look at the types of comments that people are making to the New York Times. Meanwhile, Trump hasn't said a complete, coherent sentence in years. Bry writes, someone else writes, Trump's felonies are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. There, fixed it for you. Another person says, Biden could be in a medically induced coma, and I'd vote for him crime any day before the felon, would vote for Biden's corpse over Donald Trump. Trump fell asleep repeatedly during the trial and doesn't know the name of his own wife. But you know what? Biden isn't telling us he's going to try to become a dictator. I'm voting Biden. Nice try, New York Times. It's like you guys want Project 2025 to come to fruition. One of the things I really like is that people are starting to understand Project 2025. We've been reporting about it here, how it is hand in hand with the Supreme Court's ruling to try to appoint Donald Trump as a dictator to impose a fascist state. Project 2025 outlines the plan for fascism. I'll show you a clip in a moment on that, but let's just take a look at what more people have been saying. And Mitch McConnell stroked out twice on live television. I'm voting for Biden. Reports like this take the focus of off of how dangerous a Trump second term would be. Do better, New York Times. Another comment. Project 2025. This should be your story every freaking day. You know what else is becoming increasingly common and worrisome? The demonization of a great president, and currently our one hope to continue this democracy. Lots of comments like this. Unsub to the New York Times and vote blue. Here's another comment. Using his stutter to judge competency is albiism. His stutter doesn't make him incompetent. This is irresponsible journalism. Sorry, I didn't realize I followed the New York Post. What is this? The step to defeating fascism in America is very simple. Americans know what's at stake. Another comment. Sammy goes, he could be on life support and he'd still be better than Trump. You should be educating the public on Project 2025. JFC. Chelsea Michelle goes, oh, cool. We're going to be fear-mongering to benefit the far right right after the decision of the Supreme Court made. Wow, you guys sold the F out. At New York Times, I would love to see you guys highlight Trump and his downfalls, including his felonies and rape charges. Again, I can go on. You get the point. I've shown you thousands of these. There are thousands of comments like this, and I think this is where the American people are at. This is where American public sentiment is at. Speaking of Project 2025, this is one of the leaders of the movement from Project 2025. He's from the Heritage Foundation, and here he talks about how he and MAGA are currently leading a revolution in the United States, and it will be bloodless, he says, if the left lets them. By the way, sounds like a sociopathic abuser, but that's who they are. Yet the media, yet the New York Times and others want to focus on a very decent, good-hearted man in President Biden. What? Here, play this clip.
Well, Professor, my great friend, thanks for filling in and doing a great job. Three things. Number one, in spite of all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged by what happened yesterday. And in spite of all of the injustice, which, of course, friends and audience of this show, of our friend Steve know, we are going to prevail. Number two, to the point of the clips and of course, your preview of the fact that I am an early American historian and love the Constitution, that Supreme Court ruling yesterday on immunity is vital. And it's vital for a lot of reasons, but I would go to Federalist number 70 if people in the audience are looking for something to read over Independence Day weekend, in addition to rereading the Declaration of Independence. Read Hamilton's number 70, because there, along with some other essays, he talks about the importance of a vigorous executive. You know, former congressman, the importance of Congress doing its job, but we also know the importance of the executive being able to do his job. And can you imagine, Dave Bratt, any president, put politics off to the side, any president having to second guess, triple guess every decision they're making in their official capacity? You couldn't have the republic that you just described. But number three, let me speak about the radical left. You and I have both been parts of faculties and faculty senates and understand that the left has taken over our institutions. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle in this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
But you know what? The governors have President Biden's back. Here's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz from yesterday. Play this clip. This was after 24 Democratic governors met with President Biden. They've got his back. Play the clip.
And what we understand was a Trump presidency was chaos, destruction. A Biden presidency was dealing with COVID, using the science, investing in infrastructure, and working to the middle class. And all of us are trying to figure out and just want to make sure as governors, we're on the front line of many of these things. We're in states, so whether they're swing states or not, where folks care and are giving us feedback. And the feedback was, we are all looking for the path to win. All the governors agree with that. President Biden agrees with that. He has had our backs through COVID, through all of the recovery, all of the things that have happened. The governors have his back, and we're working together just to make very, very clear on that. A path to victory in November is the #1 priority, and that's the #1 priority of the president. So that's what we're trying to get done.
Here's Governor Moore. Play the clip.
I always say this, in November, we've got a clear choice. The president was very clear that he is in this to win this. And the president is our nominee. The president is our party leader. And the president has told us, and he was very clear back there, that he is in this to win this. And so for people, I would say, and listen, we're governors. We don't do hand-wringing. That's not what we do. Governors work and get things done. Governors say, tell me the objective, and we're going to make sure that we accomplish the objective. And so for people who are concerned, I just want to be very clear on something. And come November, we've got a binary choice. And the binary choice is between someone who has continually delivered for us and our states and the people of our states, and frankly, someone whose vision for the future of this country is downright dangerous. And so I would tell people it is time to mount up. And it is time to get serious and understand what's at stake.
And here's what President Biden had to say about the 4th of July. Play this clip.
Let me end with this. Tomorrow is the 4th of July. Another reminder of why it's so important to know our history, not to erase our history, to remember the sacred cause of American democracy, and not make up a lost cause to justify evil of slavery, to remember the nation that George and Philip fought for and died for, the United States of America. That's who we are. That's who we are. The United States of America, there's nothing beyond our capacity in the United States if we work together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. And with that, it's my honor to ask the military to read the citations. Thank you.
So there you have it, folks. Judge for yourself. But wanted to bring you that report. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 3 million subscribers. Thanks to your support. Have a great day.
Welcome back. Okay, so yeah, as you could see, the right wing is, trying to scare people, essentially. And this is from a group that calls themselves a think tank. Okay, the Heritage Foundation. Okay, they're a think tank. They don't sound like much of a think tank anymore, do they? They sound like they're just like the Nazi Party, basically. And they're like, we're going to have an American Revolution, and, it'll be bloodless if the left lets us, like, okay, you really think that people are just going to sit by while you cut their throats? And, like you draw the blood, but we're not allowed to draw it back? Fuck you, okay? You are going to get your revolution over the bodies of a lot of dead Democrats, and I'll tell you right now, it ain't going to be pretty, because it's going to be just as bad on you. Okay, so Mr. Roberts, okay, you can blow air up our ass all we want, but we know exactly what that is. It's just a pile of shit. All right, this country's not going to sit idle and let a dictator take over and take away our goddamn freedoms here. Jesus Christ. Anyway, Media Matters here has an article about this fucker here, written by it's written by Media Matters staff, entitled Heritage Foundation President Celebrates Supreme Court Immunity Decision. Quote, we are in a process of the second American Revolution, unquote. Yeah, a revolution that takes us back to the first revolution, right? Jesus. In spite of all this nonsense from the left, okay, this is Kevin Roberts here talking, president. We're going to win. We're in the process of taking the country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged by what happened yesterday, and he's talking about the debate from last week. And in spite of all the injustice, which, of course, friends and audience of this show, of our friend Steve, know, we are going to prevail. Number 2, to the point of the clips, and, of course, your preview of the fact that I am an early American historian and love the Constitution. That Supreme Court ruling yesterday on immunity is vital, and it's vital for a lot of reasons, but I would go to Federalist number 70. If people in the audience are looking for something to read over Independence Day weekend in addition to rereading the Declaration of Independence, read Hamilton's number 70, because there, along with some other essays and some other essays, he talks about the importance of a vigorous executive. Former congressman, the importance of Congress doing its job, but we also know the importance of the executive being able to do his job. And you can imagine Dave Bratt, any president, put politics off to the side, any president having to second guess, triple guess every decision they're making in their official capacity. You couldn't have the republic that you just described. But number 3, let me speak about the radical left. You and I both have been parts of faculties and faculty senates and understand the reason that they are apoplectic right now. The reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle on this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of Second Amendment revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. Arrogant prick. The decision that the Supreme Court made is deeply at odds with public opinion. Okay, surveys by researchers at Brightline Watch earlier this year found that fewer than 30% of Americans, including about half of all Republicans now, believe the court should extend broad immunity to Trump and future presidents. The immunity decision joins a string of other less publicized opinions this term that will contribute to the paralyzed state of the American government and loosen constraints on public corruption. Taken as a whole, these opinions may have ripple effects on American democracy that go far beyond the immediate impact on federal regulations or Trump's impact on criminal trials. At a bare minimum, they suggest that the conservative justices have forgotten a basic first-year law school lesson. When citizens no longer believe they can resolve disputes through trusted institutions or depend on a rational legal system to hold officials accountable, they are much more inclined to take matters into their own hands. And unlike many Supreme Court oral arguments, this one isn't just a hypothetical. Quote, what we have found is that support for political violence is highly correlated with deep distrust of democratic institutions, unquote. January 6th, right? All those people that believe a government is working against them and they can't get through it. What do you think? That's what motivated them to go attack the Capitol, even though they were misled to do it. It goes to show you there is a level of anxiety in this country against our own government. That proves the point, right? For the past 3 years, CPost, Chicago Project on Security and Threats, has been tracking American support for political violence in the wake of the January 6th attack at the U.S. Capitol. One of their findings is that the levels of acceptance for the use of force in political rises as faith in the country's institution declines, as it has with the Supreme Court. Since the Capitol insurrection, Republicans have expressed the highest levels of approval for violence as a political tool. But over the last year, CPost has seen smaller but growing levels among the Democrats now. Quote, there's no reason to think that Democrats will be immune from this, says Pape. Robert Pape, director of CPost. Among its most controversial cases this term, the court struck down a 40-year-old precedent that allows federal agencies to interpret laws they administer. known as the Chevron Doctrine. This cornerstone of the administrative state has been under assault by big polluting companies and other corporate bad actors for years. In another case, the court opened the floodgate to, quote, a tsunami of lawsuits, unquote, against federal regulatory agencies by radically expanding the time frame allowed for legal challenges, according to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in her dissent in the 6-3 ruling. January 6 rioters and former President Trump received a reprieve in the court's decision in Fisher, which may result in charges being dropped for their efforts to block the certification of the 2020 election results. The court also weakened the ability of prosecutors to combat public corruption in a decision holding that there's nothing wrong with public officials taking gratuities, essentially bribes given after the fact, from parties they favor with their official actions. The recent revelations that Justice Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas have for years been taking tens of thousands of dollars worth of luxury trips and other gifts from people with business before the court made their June ruling to limit bribery. Prosecutions especially cynical. Quote, there's good reason to believe that Democrats will become more distrustful of the Supreme Court as legitimately serving its role as a guardrail of democracy, unquote, Pape says, especially given the immunity and Fisher cases and the number of cases decided along partisan lines. Quote, if those beliefs grow, then you're likely to see growing support here for the use of force on the part of the left as an alternative, unquote. For instance, CPOS found that the number of Democrats who supported using violence to restore the abortion rights the court obliterated in 2022 had doubled between January and June of 2023, growing from 8 to 16%. Among those Democrats most distrustful of the current state of democracy, that figure jumped to 26%. None of those numbers are particularly surprising. Even Republicans have been shocked about stories of women with pregnancy complications left to bleed out while their husbands look on helplessly as doctors and hospitals refuse to treat them because of state abortion bans the court allowed to take effect. The court's decision to kick the can down the road in a challenge to such a state ban in Idaho will only contribute to the fury. The Supreme Court's decision to grant presidents wide-ranging immunity from criminal prosecution is only guaranteed to fuel Democrats' fear of a second Trump term and its impact on everything from the justice system to immigration to LGBT and other civil rights. Quote, the more you see Trump as a danger to democracy, unquote, Pape says, quote, the more you support the use of force to prevent Trump to return to the presidency, unquote. All of these issues have contributed to an overall decline in America's faith in the Supreme Court, which has plummeted since 2021. Polls show the High Court's approval rating has hit record lows, and that was before its immunity ruling. A September 2023 Gallup poll found that nearly 60% of Americans disapprove of the way the court is doing its job, more than double that number from 2001. An Associated Press North poll at the end of June found that 7 in 10 Americans believed that the court's rulings are driven by ideology and not the law. The same poll found that nearly 60% of Democrats had lost all faith in the court. The Supreme Court's recent ideological and anti-democratic decisions have the potential to broadly weaken citizens' faith in American institutions, especially given the current presidential election chaos. As Barbara Walter, the author of How Civil Wars Start, How to Stop Them, writes, countries don't fall into autocracy because their leaders are weak or untested, but because their leaders, quote, start to ignore the guardrails that protect their democracies, unquote. Among the protective guardrails she cites are constraints on presidential power, or exactly the opposite of what the Supreme Court has done this term. Quote, a country standing on this threshold, as America recently was, unquote, she writes, quote, can easily be pushed toward conflict through a combination of bad governance and increasingly undemocratic measures that further weaken its institutions, unquote. Amanda Ripley, author of High Conflict, Why We Get Trapped and How We Get Out, has been studying the roots of political violence for the past 6 years. She told me recently that the real danger of the collapse in confidence in democratic institutions like the Supreme Court is that, quote, once violence gets started, it's very hard to stop. And now that we've undermined our institutions, people don't trust the institutions to do the right thing, unquote. Pape says none of the data he's mined means violence is inevitable. Quote, political violence is like a wildfire, unquote. He explains, quote, you need both combustible mass material, dry wood, and you also need a trigger, like a lightning strike or a cigar butt. With political violence, we can measure the size of combustible material. What we can't predict are the political triggers to that combustible material, unquote. Those triggers, he says, depend heavily on what political leaders do. Quote, leaders can act either as a trigger or a damper. Pape worries that all the combustible material laid down by the Supreme Court and other political players recently has created a very dangerous condition for an election after which the potential for violence tends to escalate. Quote, we're heading to a collision course after November the 5th, quote, unquote, he fears. Quote, not to say we'll certainly have political violence, but what you're observing in the last week are the ingredients for what is setting us more and more on that collision course, unquote. I kind of feel the same way about that, and I don't think I need to get polling data or whatever to kind of, see that reality. And I'll talk about that after a commercial break, so let's go to a break. We'll be right back.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me!
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
Evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The whole point of their immigration policy is to ensure political control, replace the population, get a different outcome.
Now to Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson under fire, losing more advertisers this morning after claiming immigrants make America poorer and dirtier.
We begin tonight with the sudden departure of Tucker Carlson from Fox News.
Tucker Carlson Tonight is officially over and rebranded.
Right now, it's time for Fox News Tonight, so let's get started. Google apparently doesn't think whites exist.
Every time something big happens with weather, it's climate change.
They want to take away your stove, your refrigerator, your air conditioner, and they want to even take away your meat.
Affluent white female liberals
offals. Taco bowls. Donald Trump sells taco bowls. Does Joe Biden sell taco bowls?
Here's how it all went down. Take a look.
You want to do it now? I'd love to do it right now. Well, stand your butt up then. You stand your butt up. Oh, hold on.
Oh, stop it. I think any other response kind of would have been a little gutless.
This is liberal suburban house husbands. So is the government controlling the weather with laser beams?
I hope that she's the Yoko Ono of the Kansas City Chiefs.
You know I recommend that all men refrain from using straws.
There's no indication of the nefarious intent. But of course, you've been talking a lot about the potential for foul play given the wide open border.
I mean, you have a border that's wide open. No one asks a man to close it. Black Americans online, some of them are saying, I'm voting for Trump now, because they too have sometimes felt they've been unfairly targeted by the criminal justice system.
Transvestite Recognition Day, so-called.
Is Donald Trump at risk of being America's first real political prisoner?
Primetime obviously has no evidence, but we're curious.
President Biden was asked if Trump supported an insurrection.
The mugshot has breathed new life into the Trump campaign and broadened his appeal to black Americans. This is historical fact that slaves did develop skills while they were enslaved and then used those skills as blacksmiths, as in agriculture. Has Joe Biden ever dated a black woman?
There is nobody who can move merch like Donald Trump.
He can be president from jail if he has to.
I hurt members of my family every night.
I call it complete lunacy.
Just watch us. We'll tell you both sides.
Take a look. I guess we don't have it.
Before we go, a little update on a story we brought you this week about homeless vets being displaced from hotels so that illegals could move in. Turns out the group behind the claim made it up.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we're talking about how people are getting angry. We already know the right wing is angry. January 6th showed us that. Okay, but now the Democrats are getting angry, and just as much as, you know, as those Republicans were then. And so you got a little bit of some nervousness going on in the government saying, hey, you know, the Supreme Court's not helping matters any. People are already pissed off about Trump and his crimes and the fact that he's got people sitting on the bench covering his fucking ass so he can't be prosecuted in a timely fashion, because in all honesty, he shouldn't even be running as president. He shouldn't be allowed on the ballot because of his crimes. Okay, but because, you know, we got such a broken system right now in our I'm talking about our justice system. He's able to play the game to delay until the election. You know, basically forcing the American people to decide whether this fucking guy should be president or not. And if he's president, guess what? All those other crimes that he's still waiting to sit on trial for just vanish. He can't be touched because he'll pardon himself and all those crimes will go away. You know? And if he does that, I mean, if you want to talk about a trigger, you want to talk about a fucking trigger that's going to start a fight in this country, you know, that guy from the Heritage Foundation, he's wishful thinking if he thinks that, you know, he's going to be able to see a bloodless revolution occur in our country. No, it's not going to happen, especially if you intend on continuing to take away our rights and destroy our institutions. Why should it be a bloodless thing? Okay, we fought a civil war in this country in order to maintain what we had. You know, you don't think we're going to do that again? Christ. You know, whatever dream world these people think they inhabit, okay, is just that, a dream world. Because right now, the Republicans, who have always been out of touch with reality, are not seeing the handwriting on the wall. Okay, they're not understanding the desperation of the Democrats to try to win the White House back again. Okay, they don't really understand that. Okay, to them this is all fun and games, you know, horseshoes and pin the tail on the donkey. Okay, to them that's what they're looking at, but they're not seeing the bigger picture here, and they certainly don't want their supporters to know the risk that they would be taking by voting for Trump as president. Okay, because like I said, there's too many people on the right who have an agenda to tear the country apart, and they will tear it apart even if it means shedding blood, which they would happily do. Okay, they would happily do it. But like I said, it's a sword that cuts both ways. For as much as they want things their way, the other side's going to want it go back the other way just as much. Okay, so you're going to see bloodshed. All right, and yeah, nobody wants to actually see that. But you know what? There comes a time, and every fucking country on this planet has had those fucking moments where they had to weigh what was the greater good. Okay, and sometimes, you know, those revolutions don't go the way they want, but they fight them because they know they're up against the wall. They're in the corner. They're in the fucking corner, and it's either fight or flight. You know. And when you bring people to the point where they're so mad about the country that they're just gonna fight, hey, you know, that's how it goes. And if you think the United States is immune to that, you're wrong. Okay? If anything, we're all conditioned to fight in this country. That's why we got gun violence all the time. Okay? We've all been conditioned to accept bloodshed in this country. All the wars that we've sent people off to fight that come back, all the veterans we have living amongst us, okay, we are a population geared to fight, for combat. And we are very easy to go into that mode if we feel we have no other choice. Okay, it's not going to be something that people are too afraid to do. They will happily pick up a gun and they'll take it, you know, and do something. All right, so if you think we're not a violent country, okay, you're wrong. We are a violent country. And a lot of people in America like it that way. That's why they don't want gun regulations. Well, Republicans aren't the only ones that have guns. All right, there's enough around here in this world here in this country to arm everybody. And so, like I said, if it has to come to a revolution, it will happen. It will happen. And the fact, it's not inevitable. It is inevitable. I think, what do they call it? A revolution every now and then is a healthy thing. I think it was some Russian that said that one time. And, you know, I feel like, you know, maybe it's been overdue for this country to have another civil war or something, you know, because it seems to me like because our government is already broken in a lot of different ways, we can't depend on it really to fix itself. Because we got too many idiots in Congress and Senate, in the Senate and all that, people to stand in the way of fixing the damage that they've done. So when you do that, when you stand in people's way, when they try to vote for change, vote for improvements, and it doesn't happen, you keep building people's anger. You keep building people's resentment and their mistrust of government to the point where, guess what? It just explodes like a volcano. Okay? And we don't have to be a third world country to see that happen. It happens in all kinds of countries. Christ, I mean, you have to, maybe this is a time, because, the United States is not the only country in the world right now having these problems with their government, okay? There's a lot of strife, in other governments where people are getting pissed at their leaders, and, we all think that, it's got something to do with the wealthy, getting their share, more than their share, I guess, of things, the wealth being sucked out of us and into them, and it's a domino effect where after a while people all over the world are noticing that they're being shafted in some way or another, and tensions rise in all these countries. Okay, so the United States is not alone, in how the people don't trust this government anymore. The same thing is happening in Great Britain. People over there are equally pissed at their government. And you see it on the news all the time. It's just, there's stories coming out of people getting upset with prime ministers and presidents and, whatever, we see it happening all the time. Even in Russia, the people in Russia are not happy with Putin, even though they kind of, you don't hear much about it because the press is under their thumb over there, but what news does come out of there shows that the people don't want that war to go on in Ukraine, but they're too afraid to really say it, to each other, because hey, ears hear everything, and they don't want to get rounded up and vanished. So but people, and they've had a lot of revolutions over there in Russia. I mean, people over there, I mean, they'll take shit for so long, and then all of a sudden there's a coup. But I think over here, we've allowed ourselves to kind of boil ourselves to death like the frog in the pot, and it's getting so hot now that we're just, when especially they're talking about, taking away regulations, or the agencies that we have that impose regulations to keep us safe, in the Supreme Court says, fuck that, you don't need that. Okay, who in the hell are they? When was that ever a goddamn court issue or a constitutional issue that they have to make a ruling on that the rest of the country? No, if I was president, I'd say, fuck you. That's got nothing to do with the goddamn Supreme Court. Okay, you're talking about businesses being allowed or not allowed to follow what the EPA and all them are telling. No, yet you stepped over the line. That's not a Supreme Court issue. I'm not following it. Okay, whatever you guys say over there about that, I'm not even going to listen. Okay, you're just blowing smoke up this country's ass, and that's it. We're trying to fight climate change. We're trying to put regulations on things to keep our nation safe, to keep our people safe, like the FDA and all them, so they don't get poisoned every time they go eat out at a fucking restaurant, and that they can drink water out of the tap that's not going to kill them when they, them or their pets or something. Okay, you guys want to stand in the way of that? Fuck you. You're not going to do it. The line is drawn in the sand right there. You step over that, and things are going to happen where the Supreme Court is just going to vanish like a fart in the wind. Keep it up. Keep it up. That's what I would tell them. That's what I would tell them as president. Okay. Well, I don't care, that they're justices. The president has authority enough to say something like that to them, and to let them know, put them on notice that you're not going to do my job. You do your job, and you let me do mine. Okay. And we'll get along just fine. But you keep your fucking, your agenda out of my fucking plate. You know, you guys are just, you're a bunch of radicals over there for the right wing. You know, you got an agenda. And you're not even supposed to be like that as a fucking Supreme Court judge, and you know it. Christ, you've been around long enough, and you've been educated in schools with, you know, high levels of education to know exactly what it is you're doing. You know fucking well what you're doing. So don't play stupid. Don't hide behind the Constitution. Oh, we're being justices for the Constitution. No. You can save that act for Hollywood if you're looking for an Emmy, but don't throw that in our face here on the real world, because we're not buying it. We know what you're doing. You're activist judges, and you're out there trying to push an agenda for your right-wing lackeys out there. Okay, this thing about the ban on abortion and all that, okay, none of that has anything to do with the Constitution. None of it. Christ. You know, I'm interested in knowing how many cases sit on the desks of the Supreme Court. How many of those cases that they got actually have anything to do with the Constitution, or are they just there being pushed by some politician who want to see something enacted in their favor to throw in the face of the government? Okay, are they there to do their job, or are they there just to push someone else's agenda? You know, because it really seems to me like there's a lot of people in this country who need the Supreme Court to decide on something crucial, and instead they pick the other out of the other pile, something like banning abortion. You know, look in the past of all the other cases the Supreme Court has listened to, okay, and you'll see a pattern. The cases they hear have something to do about the merit or an issue about the Constitution, whether or not it covers that or whether it doesn't cover that, okay? And then fast forward to today and look at the decisions made by the court now. You're going to see that there's a big change in what the hell they want to hear in court and what gets left behind. You're going to see the pattern change, okay? And the reason of that change is because of those 6 justices and the 3 that Trump appointed. You're going to see those fucking justices getting their way because they're the dominant ones, right? The 3 remaining judges are Democratic or, you know, or liberal thinking. But the 6 Republican ones, they only want to talk about issues that pertain to the Republican Party to push their agenda because they can't win it any other way. They know they don't have the votes to pass their ban on abortion. They know they don't have the votes to do what they did with the regulatory agencies in this country. So they run to the Supreme Court and they ask them to figure out a way to say that it's unconstitutional in some fashion. You know, that's what they do. They're using the court as a weapon. They weaponized it. And as a president, he's going to have to do something to put his foot down on that and say, that weapon is not going to be used here against its own government. All right, you're there to service the people in this country, to help deal with their issues, okay, and whether or not their issues run in conflict with the Constitution or not. Abortion is not a constitutional issue. That is an issue that depends on people's rights to their own body, okay? And you're not going to find anywhere in the Constitution where it says abortions have to be banned, okay? It's not in there. All right, so, you know, the decision that should have been made from there, what should have been obvious to anybody, to say that that is something that has to be decided by the lower courts, you know, and we can't allow a ban on something like that. That's undoing, you know, the rights of women have for their own health. We can't block people from health-related matters. I mean, it's like saying, well, you can't get treatment for cancer because cancer is, you know, whatever you want to call it. We can't allow you to fight cancer. Okay, you just can't do it. Don't come to us. Go to a doctor to get treatment for cancer. If they try, we're going to arrest the doctor and we're going to throw you in jail for getting treatment for cancer. Same fucking thing. Only we're talking about a birth or, you know, or a pregnancy. Okay, these pregnancies, not all of them, you know, are good pregnancies. Sometimes complications happen, And people have to make some tough choices, and it's not the place of the government to do that for them. I mean, you want to be you don't want to, if you do that, you're acknowledging women can never be adults, that they can't think for themselves. That's what you're saying. When you make bans on certain things to do with women, you're saying you don't trust a woman to do the right thing. You know? Where do you draw the line? Next, you'll be saying, oh, we can't trust women to drive. We can't trust women to be educators. We can't trust women to raise their children. You know, when you start down that road, you know, where does it stop? Where do you finally say, oh no, the Supreme Court went too far? It already did go too far just by starting down that trail. But if you wait and keep letting them get away with it, hey, they're going to feel emboldened to keep taking it to the next level. And by the time you get the courage to say enough is enough, you know, Jesus Christ, your women are going to be walking around robed where they're not, you know, it's going to look like fucking the Middle East, you know? So, you know, like I said, it's sad that, you know, this is where we are as a country. And it's the most volatile point right now. And it's like they described it. It's a tinderbox right now. Just waiting for a spark. Just waiting for a spark. And I think I said this in a previous video. You know, that it would only take a one thing to spark a fucking revolution in this country, or a civil war. You know, we're waiting for Fort Sumter, basically. That's what we're waiting for. Because the level of anger on both sides, okay, I'm not going to discount whatever they're angry about, which is bullshit for the most part, because they believe lies. But their anger mixed with the anger of the left, because the other side can't see reason, you know, and the Supreme Court in the middle constantly throwing kindling onto the fire. You know, hey, you're gonna create a goddamn mess here that's not going to end well, okay? And you know, it's like the guy said, you know, once something like that starts, it's very hard to stop it, because when the government steps in to try to stop it, it only makes the government look worse, and it just creates more anger and drives the fight to go on longer. So you see, I mean, just think about Kent State, how that happened when they sent the military in there. Okay, and some of the kids, they got shot and killed. Okay, I mean, Jesus Christ. It was a miracle that a civil war didn't start over that, but it got bad. You know, and I think, you know, at a time when the country's trust in the government was deteriorating, it wasn't as low as it is today, but back in those days it was low, and then that shit happened. I mean, you don't want something like that happening now, because I do think that it would not be stopped with just the National Guard or something like that. They'd have to put active duty people, boots on the ground in the cities, martial law, tanks, everything, because people won't stop. You got decades of anger from government just chipping, and people's ability to make a living in this country, to people's rights. It's been going on since the fucking 50s, I think, or a little bit later. But you know, we've got a long period of people feeling disenfranchised and feeling like they're not important, and that the government's not listening to them, and that the leaders that they keep getting in there are idiots a lot of times, you know. And right now it feels like it's all come to a head. Like this point in history, like I said before, this is a very, very important point in American history right now we are living in. Okay, where November, Election Day, is going to be a very, very important moment. I can't imagine, you know, other than like the Civil War or something like that, where the fate of our country is going to depend on what happens this November, who gets to be president again, and what happens after. Because somebody's going to lose. Somebody has to lose in this election, and whoever's going to lose, the people that on one side or the other are not going to sit idle over that. It's going to create some nasty shit. And I hope the government's ready for that, because I'll tell you, No matter who wins, the other side's going to be itching for a fight. Just like what happened there last time there, January 6th. Look for that. That's what's going to happen. You've already got people like from the Heritage Foundation already talking about bloodless revolution. You know, they're already beating the war drums here for a fucking fight, and they're off the wall remarks. Okay, what they're saying in code, I'm just going to say outright. If you try to go over our head, do an end run around us by shoving a criminal into the White House, you're going to have trouble. Okay, it's going to happen. You're going to have trouble. Because a lot of people in this country, and I don't give a shit what the polls say, it's not neck and neck. Nobody wants to see a criminal in the White House, okay? That would be so embarrassing for an American around the world to see that their leader, who is not even welcome in 37 countries because of the fact that he is a criminal, okay, and that those countries don't even like him, and they banned him from the, I mean, and then he becomes president again? You know, the shame that the Republicans want to put on us as a country is really unfair. Why should we live under their thumb, under the Republicans' thumb, and live in shame because they want to have an abortion ban, or they want to get something from Trump? I don't know what the hell he promised them, but you know, it can't be real, and it's definitely, they're not going to get it, whatever the hell it is. But it's just sad. It's just sad that this is where we are, you know. And you know, my father told me before he passed away 10 years ago that I was going to see some shit that happen in this country that's never been seen before. My dad had a fucking talent to predict the future, and things happen as he predicted it. And I'm afraid that he's going to probably be right about this too. All right, and I think that when you've lived long enough on this world, you see patterns. I see a pattern right now of history repeating itself. It's not a good thing, what I'm seeing. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it because either they weren't paying attention in history class, or they don't have any experience understanding events because they don't take the time. They spend too much time watching pornography or you know, watching people set themselves on fire to see how long they live. You know, people are immersed in the stupidity of things to care about enlightening themselves about their environment, to see things, to be aware of your surroundings. Okay, I was raised in a different way, so my attention about my surroundings is pretty keen, I think, and I see patterns. And unfortunately, I'm seeing the ignorance take over this country's electorate. And I'm hoping there's still enough people who are like me, who can see these patterns, will get out and vote and stop this shit before it gets any worse. Because God help us if you know, Trump wins again. I really can't think of a darker period of our country to happen than to see him come back there as president. Because I guarantee you, it's not going to be a fun day at Disneyland for any of us, Republicans included. So. Anyway, that's it for today, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Subscribe, comment, share, and subscribe. And please keep your ears open for any health-related matters. And treat each other kindly out there when you go to the flea markets, which I think a lot right now, this time of the year, is where they come out. So go to the flea markets and you know, be nice to each other. I know a lot of people like to talk about things at the flea markets, and you know, politics always seems to be one of the things I hear people talk about, and I wish they'd shut up about that, because you know, things like that just only irritate people, especially when they don't agree on something, you know. And I've seen things get pretty hectic at some flea markets around here when people start talking religion or politics, mostly politics, but you know. Anyway, just try to enjoy your weekend and take care. All right, talk to you later.